Hey guys, what's going on? Zan Barksdale for another edition of Catching-101 TV. Excited to have today's guest, Collin Wilber. Collin's a coach at Inspiration Academy down in Florida, and we were talking just before we started recording. He's still heading to work every day, and Florida's opening up, and baseball looks like it's starting to be played soon, so there are signs of hope. But Collin, man, thanks for coming on. You're a guy that I've gotten to know a little bit kind of through Catcher-Con and then really through social media. First, kind of as we get started, let everybody know, who you are, where you came from, also where they can find you online on your social media channels, and just kind of give us a little bit of background.
Yeah. First of all, just thank you for having me. Thank you for all you do for the catching community. Went to my first Catcher-Con this year, and that's just an unreal experience. You can't get that. There's nothing better for catchers or catching coaches than to go there. But yeah, so I'm originally from Virginia, the Hampton Roads area, kind of Yorktown, Newport News, Norfolk, kind of bounced around there for forever. I actually went to two different Division III schools right in that area, 10 minutes from where I grew up. Christopher Newport, I went there for 2 years, really good Division III program. And then I transferred to the Newport News Apprentice School, which is a trade school. So it's kind of an interesting deal there, where I was 5 days a week building nuclear aircraft carriers and submarines, and then for a full-time job, 8 hours, 40 hours a week, and then going to play baseball right after. So it's a little bit of an interesting.
That's definitely an interesting transition. I'd say most
Yeah.
most college athletes don't have that on their resume.
No. Yeah, so I did that for 3 years, and then moved up to Michigan, and that was when I started coaching at my old high school and doing some summer ball stuff down in Virginia, and that was where I kind of realized I liked this coaching thing. And so me and my brother moved up to Michigan. Probably not your ideal place to get your coaching career started, but that's what I did. So kind of went all in on that, went back to school. And my first year in Michigan, I was a student manager at Eastern Michigan University, and did some lessons and worked at a facility up there. And then second year was, again, full-time student, still finishing up. And then I was a volunteer assistant at Concordia University, Ann Arbor. And then full-time student, full-time Uber driver, just doing whatever I had to do to make it work and kind of chase down the dream. And then this past August, I came down here to be the catching coordinator at Inspiration.
Go ahead and tell us. So I'm kind of familiar with Inspiration, but if you would go into a little bit more detail and kind of let everybody know who maybe doesn't know or hasn't heard of it yet, a little bit more about the school.
Yeah, so it's a Christian-based school, and we have it's a normal school. We have 6th graders through 12th graders, and then we also have a post-grad team. So that's kind of made up of the majority college freshmen, basically, that would be college freshmen. And then we have some guys who they go play 1 year and didn't get the playing time they wanted, or wasn't the situation they were hoping for. We had a couple guys who went to JUCO for 2 years, and then, same deal, kind of didn't get the offers they wanted or had no interest really. So it's kind of all over the place, but it's mostly like college, like 18, 19-year-olds who maybe are a little physically underdeveloped, or they could hit but can't play defense, or vice versa, where it's just they kind of take this year where it doesn't count against their eligibility for college, and they take this year, they come here and they develop, and then we kind of help them, guide them through that process of finding the school for them. So that's actually another part of my job. I'm the college placement coordinator here, where we kind of help them find their next school, the fit for them.
And I think that's a pretty interesting thing, the whole, gap year concept. I'm also kind of curious, I want to get into a little bit later, how the dynamic works where you have, freshmen, and then you have sophomores, and you have all high school students, and then you have guys who are a little bit older who have gone
Yeah.
back and had some college experience, maybe they've come back. So I want to
Mhm.
get into that, but before we do, again, maybe there's some people that are watching this for the first time and they're just now being introduced to you. Go ahead and let us know where your social media handles are and where people can find you online if they want to look you up.
Oh yeah, it's so both Twitter and Instagram are just at Collin_Wilber. Really simple.
Keep it simple. That's the best way to do it. So,
Yeah.
um, well, awesome. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on here is, there's a couple of reasons, but I try to pay attention to what's going on in the catching world, and like I said, I've gotten to meet you at CatcherCon, but I'm really impressed by what you're doing online and the breakdowns and this, kind of your social media presence. I think you do a good job. Um, you know, take what's going on at the big league level and transferring it over to your high school guys. So as we kind of dive into it, I want to talk about how you do that and what your thoughts are. But I think a good starting position would be, what would be your if you had to have a mission statement, I guess, with your catchers. If you're the catching coordinator inspiration, what is your goal for all the catchers? What are kind of the pillars or the foundations that you want to instill in all of them to have?
I think for me and our guys, it's I want to create really good problem solvers. I'm I think these guys are all they're here to kind of chase that next level, whether it's the sixth graders trying to, you know, get some time in the middle school games, or it's ninth and 10th graders trying to get to varsity. It's the varsity guys trying to get to college. It's the post grad guys trying to get to college. They're all kind of chasing that next level. So I think for me, it's just about I'm not trying to limit anything that they can do. Like I want to give them, when it comes to like developing, receiving, blocking, throwing, bunt plays, whatever, like no one pitch, no one play is the same to me. So I think as much as if I can give them as many tools as they can to kind of solve every problem, that's kind of what I'm trying to do is give them options and not limit them in any way to ultimately get them to where they want to go.
And I think that's a great way to look at it, is trying to help guys become better problem solvers, because whether it be in baseball or, a job in the real world or whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, most of the people who are successful, they're good problem solvers. I've said it for a long time that I think the most
Yeah.
successful people in the world, whether it be in relationships or sports or business or whatever, I think they're good communicators, and I think they're able to solve problems, so that's one thing that I definitely agree with you there. If I had to guess, just from knowing you and watching what you post, it seems to me like you're, really fascinated by what's going on in the receiving world right now, and kind of,
Yeah.
the changes that are being made. And maybe that's an
Mhm.
understatement, for guys that don't follow you, but that's definitely something,
Uh-huh.
you show an interest in.
For sure.
I'd love to hear, what are your overall thoughts, and maybe being a high school coach, how have your thoughts kind of changed or evolved over the past couple of years? And then we can get into more specifics, but I'd love to hear kind of just the philosophy first.
Yeah, so last year when I was at college, I was kind like my first couple years, I was way more interested in the hitting side. I sucked as a hitter when I played, so that was kind of my motivation there was like just like I need to figure this out. Why was I so bad? I was a guy that worked hard and like it doesn't make sense to me. But then, so I got the job at Concordia last year, and it was more of a catching specific deal. So, and honestly, I had no clue as to like what I was doing. Like as a player, I had zero catching instruction, which like looking back on it now, I think has become a huge blessing because I had no biases towards anything. It was like, well, I I just got back there and kind of did it, and I had a good arm, and it worked out. So, um, I think last year I kind of dove into it a little bit, and I was teaching more of like the wrist roll and like minimal movement, and we did some one knee stuff with nobody on, but still kind of more traditional and like still teaching, everything kind of traditionally that I knew. Is more so like I saw this one ABCA presentation. I was like, okay, this is all I know. So I'm going to go crank this out. And then like as the season went on, I was like, this isn't it. Like we can be so much better. And that's when I kind of started diving in more on what the pro guys are doing. It helped me a lot last year that the Tigers were terrible, so I'm not watching any Tigers games. And so I just watched, every night MLB TV, like Austin Barnes, Real Muto, Hedges, Garver, just kind of, I didn't watch games for, you know, as a fan. It was, I just want to watch catchers that I know are doing things at a high level and kind of just that's where it really started, like around this time last year, just kind of really diving hard into what are these guys doing receiving wise, especially. And then it's kind of just evolved from there. Then when I took this job here and it was going to be nearly all catching, it's like, okay, well, now I need to, really do this and kind of figure things out because I'm going to be, I'm the guy now. So it's like there's nobody here to help me catching wise, and I'm in charge of 20-25 catchers every year. So that's kind of where it evolved from there. I spend more time on Baseball Savant than probably any sane man should. But yeah, I think from my sixth graders to my post grads, like I don't think I really coached them any differently, especially as far as the receiving goes. I think it's like I've never really understood like in any aspect of the game where like people say like, yeah, that he's a pro guy though, so he like this 11-year-old or whoever, this high school kid can't do that. And I've just like always disagreed with that. I think if we're not modeling after those guys, like what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where my whole philosophies kind of come from: receiving, blocking, throwing, everything. It's like, what are these guys doing? And that's what I want my guys to do.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and that's a good plan. And I think now it's a little bit more accessible to do that because of, like you said, Baseball Savant, because of all the clips we can see online. We have guys like you who are clipping
Mm-hmm.
things together and let people see them. One of the things that I found interesting is, you said you kind of had to dive in because when you took the job at Concordia, it was a catching job. And it's funny because over the past, 15 years or so, I've gotten, I mean, I literally couldn't even count it. It's 1,000 emails from people who are, it seems like in a similar position where they're like, hey, Zan, man, I know you know something about catching. I just got my first job. I was a middle infielder. I was a pitcher. I was a whatever. I don't know anything about catching,
Yeah.
but my intro into the coaching world is through a catching position. It seems like that's a pretty common route, especially
Mm-hmm.
guys that want to get in at the college level. I know a lot of
Sure.
D1 schools that, you have a head coach, you have, a pitching coach, you have a recruiting coordinator, and they all might have some intertwined responsibilities. But it seems like a lot of times, the guy that's in that, the volunteer role or the grad assistant role or whatever role it is at their school, they kind of get stuck. I hate to say stuck, but they get stuck coaching catchers. And a lot of times they have no, background in it, or maybe minimal background in it. But man, I'd say you're doing the right things. Obviously, you're diving right in. You're watching games. You're learning from people. You're going to conventions and doing that sort of stuff. So you're on the right track and doing good things there. I want to ask you specifically, and I agree. I think there's a lot of good things going on at the big leagues right now. There's a lot of change happening. With you coaching guys from sixth grade all the way to post grad, what would you say are some of the big differences? Maybe not necessarily in the way you coach, but just in their development. Because again, a sixth grader is going to be 12 years old or so, and then you're coaching guys all the way to 20. There's a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for development. So while I know they're probably practicing the same skill set, do they go through the same drills? Is there a different progression? Do your younger guys do anything differently than the older guys?
I mean, I think it's pretty similar. We're really lucky into where we're not under any guidelines, so we're not like under time constraints or anything like that. So, I mean, and being in Florida, we have, like this, we start up like the second week of August until, like the last weekend of January, I think we started playing, where it's literally like we're not really playing many games. We might play one game here and there, but it's literally like we're just gonna develop these guys. I think that's where this inspiration deal is really different. We have 11 coaches that this is our job as full time. Like we're gonna develop these guys. So I don't think it's obviously like with the sixth graders, the seventh graders, eighth graders, it's a little more foundational. Um, but I'm lucky where I have some really talented sixth and seventh graders who've like picked up on stuff really quickly where, after the first couple months, it's like I can challenge these guys and kind of throw new stuff at them where it's really not that different from, my senior starter to my 11-year-old sixth grader who's a stud. He
Hmm.
might be the best catcher in the academy. He's got I'm lucky where they have some of that natural, like before I even got here, like this kid's doing one knee blocks and stuff like that. And that's like, I didn't teach him any of that, and I'm not certainly not going to coach it out of him. So I don't think I don't, it's obviously it's maybe a little more individual where I like, it's like, hey, we need to, you know, break it down a little bit more with the younger guys. But I think it's like after this year, having that like full year with me, and like if all these guys are back and it's, we're kind of gonna hit the ground running. I think on the post grad side, where I'm gonna have a whole new group of guys, it'll be a little different. But um, like organizationally, I don't think we do a whole lot of different stuff. Like as far as like drills and everyday work, they're kind of all um, riding the same train.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get into something that, I know you're the most passionate about, which is the receiving side of it. I'm sure everybody who's watching this is probably fairly well aware that, the thoughts and the methods and what people are teaching has changed over the past couple of years, really pretty dramatically in the past 3 or 4 or 5 years. Um, you
Hmm.
know, Now you're seeing much more glove manipulation. You're seeing a lot of different stances, a lot more individualization. You're seeing that at the big league level, all the way down. It's trickled down to guys like you who are working with high
Hmm.
school, post grad, and even guys in middle school. What are some of your thoughts about you know where the receiving's going, and just your overall thoughts on? We can pick out a couple topics. The one knee stance and the manipulation, and just what are your feelings on what's going on in the receiving world right now?
No, I think I'm all in on sort of the modern way of catching.
Hmm.
Um, Receiving wise, I think having sort of made that mistake last year where it was like just a wrist roll or whatever, and like me realizing way too late in the year that I couldn't really do anything about it. Like I came in this year, it was just like we're gonna be really good at moving the hell out of the ball. Like just watching pro guys, it's like we're gonna do that. And so I think that was like the big thing when I first got here. It was like we're gonna be all in on this. We're gonna really hone in on the receiving part, and having so much time in the fall and there's really no winter here, so like having
Yeah.
so much time before we have to play, I think it's pretty easy for us to get really good at that before these guys have to play any like meaningful games. We have a lot of time to experiment with different things, and the guys will tell you if you ask them, like I've thrown them into some crazy situations where it's like, hey, I don't really know if this is going to work, but let's do it and see if it works out. So the receiving part was like, I think especially being my first year here, is like we need to establish this culture of like receiving is important, and we're gonna value the heck out of this. So it's something that carries forward. As far as the one knee stuff, that was something that was also like really new to me this year, that I really had no idea how it was going to work out. I think when Zach Stout posted that case study about his high school guys, that he did it with them. And I think that was the first time where it was like, okay, like I need to do this in some form or fashion. So I basically just brought it to my older guys and was like, hey, like this is what this is. These are the numbers behind it. Like this is what Tanner's doing with the Twins, what they were all doing throughout the organization. And like, I think it's going to work. I think it's going to be beneficial for us. So and this was probably November or something, so we still had a bunch of time. It's like, let's try and hammer this out and kind of see how it works out. And obviously, I mean, we were doing, one knee stuff, but nothing where it was like, hey, we're going to go all in one knee, catch whole games from one knees. So just taking it from there and saying, and then like kind of seeing how it evolved. Like I had no idea as far as like coaching the like small nuances of like the one knee system. I was kind of just like, Zach kind of gave me the guidelines that like Mitch Garver did last year, and it was like, okay, well, I'm gonna take this and like let's see how it works. And I mean, just like how quickly like these guys just like it was just so clear that they were already better. Like it just happened so quickly, and like especially like my post grad guys, like all five of my post grad catchers were on a knee exclusively, and not because I said, hey, you have to do this.
Mhm.
They just like immediately saw the benefits like across the board, not just with the receiving, but with blocking and throwing. Like it really just wasn't close. We were better at everything from the one knee than we were from the traditional stances. So I think that's just it kind of evolved from there. And I still had initially like they were uncomfortable, especially with like the right knee down stuff. And like it just as it evolved, like I had guys who went all right knee down this year, like never came out of the right knee down kickstand setup. So it was just really cool to see, and then like tracking everything from the fall and then till we got cut off in the spring, just like how beneficial it really was. Like it's something that I'm really a big believer in now.
Well, so again, a lot of good information there. I do want to circle back, to like some of the receiving stuff. But while you're on the thought of the one knee down, one thing that I get asked a lot, and you have great experience because you work with a wide age group of guys. Do you feel like the younger guys, I get where receiving may be easier for everybody, okay? Or any of the younger guys that maybe aren't quite as strong or aren't developed, do you feel like they block as well, or does that take a little more work for them, or what's kind of that process?
I think initially they were just like, with the older guys, it was, hey, like I like when we started, like I didn't know. I was like, I've watched a bunch of video on Mitch Garver, but that's just like one example of a guy where it was like, this is the only guy doing it. So, this like specific type of block might not work for you. So like with my older guys, it was kind of like, let's just figure it out. And then like, as I started to learn more about it, we kind of adapted from there. And then I honestly like didn't want to bring it as much to my younger guys. It was like, okay, if like they ask, like, yeah, absolutely, we'll do it. Because
Mhm.
I think that's something that I'll definitely dive into more next year, is like giving them that option to do it with runners on and everything like that. Like they did it this year, but not like as much as my older guys were doing it. I think it was kind of across the board, like, but maybe a little bit more for the younger guys, is they wanted to know, like, hey, on this pitch, if I'm in this stance, like, how do I do this? Like, how do I block this? And it's like, like I could tell you like this is the one way you can do it, but that's not gonna like really do you any good. So it's like, hey, well, get your glove to it or get your belly button to it and like keep it in front of you and keep the runner from advancing. So I think that's more so is just like getting them to understand that's like I'm not limiting your options here. Obviously, if it's like it becomes an issue and like you just can't block from the stance and we need to break it down a little more. But I think kind of with as much time as we have to kind of experiment and see what works and see what doesn't, it was more so like I want you to figure it out and I want you to come to me with questions rather than me just being like, hey, this is how you do it and this is the only way you're going to do it.
Yeah, I think that's an important one. Kind of my thought on that is, when guys are getting down in a one knee stance, and again, most of the guys we see are the guys on TV who are, for the most part, very athletic and have strong arms and have all those
Yeah.
qualities. But when the younger guy's trying it, there's not necessarily, a blueprint or a playbook that, hey, on this pitch, we're going to do exactly this. But if he throws it over here, you got to adjust and do this. It's a lot more of kind of just, hey man, go be an athlete, go out there and
Yeah, for
you're
sure.
going to be off balance, kind of like a shortstop. They might have to feel the ball in the hole and throw on the jump from their back foot and all, make a crazy play.
Yeah.
I think catchers are having to become more athletic in that position. It's like you said, how do you teach a guy how to block out of that? Well, I mean, there are some certain cues, but at the end of the day, it's about, hey, can you
For
get your
sure.
belly to the ball? And I think that's one
Yeah.
thing that's important for people to remember because, a lot of the guys who are, they're looking out for that instruction. They're trying to, they want to start teaching the one knee, or they want to start teaching the, the new school, so to speak. They're looking for, hey, this is what you do. This is step one. This is step two. This is step three. And I don't think it's completely
Yeah.
laid out like that, kind of like it used to be. I think it's
No, definitely.
a lot more allowing guys some flexibility and allow them to be athletic. And that's where, from a coaching standpoint, it comes in. You just have to work with your guys. You have to experiment. You have to give them plenty of reps and let them find out what works and help them gain the awareness of what is working and what's not working.
Yeah. I think that was something that like, especially like early on when, we were working with it and they're catching bullpens or maybe like an inner squat here and there. And like they might have struggled a little bit, like, hey coach, how do I block this like this slider that's, like way out and how do I get to that? It's like, like I could give you the answer maybe. Like it's probably not going to be an answer you want to hear. It's going to be do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
But like instead of just doing that, it's like, okay, like let's get on the machine and let's practice this. Like let's do some more chaotic stuff where it's I'm moving the machine around, I'm going up and down, and it's a received block, and like let's kind of try and figure it out because like it's not going to do me or do you any good for me to just say, hey, this is what you have to do. I think once we kind of like they understood that, hey, like I'm not giving you the answer, like this is what it like you have to kind of figure it out on your own, and we have to see what works and what doesn't. I think that was when they like really got confident with it, where it's like, okay, like coach is serious about this. Like he's not, he's not saying like this is how you have to do it. It's like, okay, like I can kind of do whatever I have to do to keep the ball there. And I think we've kind of for too long kind of underestimated like as players and coaches like what they're able to do from like these different setups, like using your glove a little more. Like you watch a guy like Real Muto who's like in that like very wide and like can't move a ton stance when he is like kicking out to the leg super extended, and yet like I think this year was his best blocking year yet because like his body's there, he's able to make later decisions, and obviously he's a freak athlete, but like just like as far as like underestimating like our ability to just like adapt to the task versus like, hey, this is how you have to do it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that. And like I said, I think our job as coaches is, it's not always just tell the guys what to do. It's help them figure out, help them figure out what works best for them, whether it be, with their swing or defensively. I do think there's, I say a set of foundations. I think there's certain things that each guy, kind of needs to do in order to have success. but in between each of those, peg points, there's some variability. And our job as coaches is to, work with them inside those parameters to figure out what works best for them. So, man, that's good stuff. I want to circle back around to the receiving, which you talked about a little while ago. And I'm going to go ahead and start off with this. I want you to share a couple of drills you like. And the reason I bring that up is because you posted a drill on Twitter. It's probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now, where you had like a long range breaking ball going. And I thought that was awesome. So for the people who haven't seen it, It was a breaking ball machine. I don't know if it was 75 feet away, 90 feet away, but it was a huge sweeping breaking ball that you had your guys working on receiving. I thought that was a great drill, so maybe you can explain that one and explain a couple of the others. Maybe your I know there's probably a lot that you do, but maybe a few that, your favorites.
Yeah. That was actually the first time I ever tried that. That was something that I believe Tanner and Craig Driver talked about on one of those first Coaches versus COVID. So I'm not taking credit for that. But yeah, like that was all, honestly, like that's probably something that's going to be, done a lot next year, because it just really, anything to challenge your timing and like your pre-pitch move. Because I think that's such a crucial part of receiving. Like if you're looking at big league catchers, like a lot of them are trying to do similar things as far as like the post catch and moving the ball. I think for the most part, like everyone's sort of on board with that at this point. But like if you watch I'm not trying to throw names under the bus, but if you watch some of those guys that are the bottom receivers who aren't as successful, it starts a lot with like their pre-pitch move. So then like allowing their glove to come up, and then the second that ball is down there, you're screwed, and there's no way you're getting that call. So
well, let me cut you right there. So go into a little bit more detail about that, the pre-pitch move, and maybe specifically what the guy, because I'm with you, specifically what you see the guys that are doing a poor job, what are they doing? And the guys who are doing a good job, what are they doing with that?
Yeah, so I think like if anything with that's the guys that aren't good, they're some of them like start a little higher. Not that that's there are some guys that are successful that start a little higher, but anytime there's any kind of like pre-pitch float or anything, you're not going to get that pitch down, because you have to go down and stab at it, and you're not able to work up through it. So I think that's honestly the biggest thing, is like where I'd start with anyone who's like, hey, I'm struggling with receiving. It's like, I'd say 9 times out of 10, you can trace that back to what they're doing before the catch. So I think that's a big thing that like we do, especially like to start with, is like we're going to experiment with a lot of different pre-pitch moves. Like you see a lot of the guys that are successful now that are going to the ground. They do a touchdown, or Hedges kind of takes it in, Flowers kind of takes it into the ground, Muto kind of scrapes the ground a little bit. Tucker, Barnhart, those guys, they're all, it's not, I'm not saying you have to go to the ground, because I don't think you do. I think the ideal pre-pitch move is no pre-pitch move at all. But I think just the reality of it is you have to give guys something to do, because like if they're just sitting there, most of them are gonna freak out. They're gonna like start going all over the place, because it's just your instinct is like, there's a ball coming that's coming at my face, and like you want to protect yourself. So I think that's something that really needs to be trained, and something that we do a lot of work with early. Like it's not any fancy drills or anything really. I just call them like the Real Muto, the Hedges, the Flowers, or whoever, that day, the Garver. Like we're just going to mix, we're going to try out different things. And that's something we do a lot of early, because it's like we need to find your move or your moves that work for you.
Yeah, so I like the idea of that. I mean, I think that everybody needs some sort of, pre-pitch movement that is predetermined, and it's consistent.
Yeah.
No different than a batter getting in the batter's box. You think back to No More Garcia Part, he'd always do the batting gloves. Some guys tap the plate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, whatever it is, you have a routine. Part of it's for comfort, and part of it actually does have, some real value in there too, is, starting the mid low, whether it be starting, from the ground or slightly above the ground. I'm big on creating habits and creating routines. And I'm all for guys having stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's and it's not necessarily something that has to be with the glove either. It's like I was listening to the mound visit. They had Tony Walters on the other day, and he was talking about how he uses his breath as like that's his like pre-pitch trigger. It's like I can't remember what the timing of it was necessarily, but he was like, when I, like let my breath out, that like kind of gets me, ready to go. And I tried that day. It's like, guys, you got to throw a bullpen today because like I need to try this.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense. Like, and I think, one of my better high school receivers, he does a lot where he starts in like a more traditional secondary, and then like as soon as that pitcher starts to move, he kind of kicks his leg out, one way or the other, and gets into his one knee setup. And he probably doesn't even realize that he does that, but that works for him like pre-pitch. Like he doesn't really move his glove any. He just kind of kicks out into that stance. And it's, like I said, it's probably not something he even knows that he does, but it works. So I'm not gonna like, hey, what are you doing here? It works. So I'm not messing with it.
Yeah. No, interesting stuff, man. Like I said, I can talk about that stuff with you all day long. I am curious. Like I said, we talked about that one drill. When your guys show up to practice every day, what would, and again, I know your high school situation is a little bit different than most high schools where they're in school, from 8:30 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, and then practice starts at 3:30. And I know you have a little bit more hours with your guys, but what is their, pre-practice routine, whether it be, hey, every day we're going to stretch, we're going to go through dynamic warm-ups, we're going to have an arm care program. Just what is the program? How do you guys kind of prepare?
Yeah, so throughout our program, we're lucky enough where our strength guy, Brian Comerford, he crushes like the strength and mobility stuff of that. So I don't even have to mess with that. And like I said, we had 4 pitching coaches and like we have 11 coaches. So it really allows me to focus on the catching. But yeah, we'd like throughout the academy, we have our 6th graders through postgrads. They're all kind of doing the same thing as far as like the drive line programs, like the arm care.
Mm-hmm.
They all have a throwing program where, we're taking this, we're doing this the most that we can to kind of take care of these guys and get the most out of them that they can. And then I have like so if we normally do like 2 or 3 individual days a week, so where I have an hour or so with the catchers, and then I have like an everyday drill menu where it's, you pick 1, 2, 3, 4 drills of, it's just more like block stuff, something you can do with a partner or something you can do by yourself. Where if it's just like, I strap a wrist weight on and throw a green plyo ball in my glove, and I just do like dry framing reps, or, I throw a J band on and one of my buddies tosses me some weighted balls or something, like anything like that, like dry blocks, or, we have a partner roll you something, you do some transfers off a wall, whatever it is, to where they're getting something in that day, even though I don't have like that hour with them. And then something we did this year that I really wish I had done earlier on in the year, but going more towards the spring, is I gave them a weekly catch play thing. So they had different tasks. So you have 3 or 4 receiving tasks where if you're catching the ball, you're working on your receiving, you're going plays at the plate, rolling out a bunt, anything like that, block and recover, just so you're getting those reps in every day. And then throwing tasks, so throwing on the run, rollouts to the left, rollouts to the right, throwing from different arm slots, doing your footwork in exchange to each base. So I give them like this is what we're doing for the week. This is our focus of the week. These 3 or 4 tasks, and it's not a set distance or anything. It's like you just have to get these tasks done. So I think it allows them to kind of be athletic and kind of figure out different ways to where they can make these plays that's and kind of just make it their own. They're just kind of, it's not like a set, hey, you have to be at 90 feet and do this. Like you could be at 120 feet and like, hey, I haven't seen you do a rollout to the left. Like you better figure that out. Like I need to see one of those before we're done. So I think that was something that they liked a lot and was pretty beneficial.
Yeah, that's one thing I like doing with guys too. Is I like it when guys have some input into their program. Like I don't want to tell our guys, hey, this is every single rep, every single exercise, every single set, every single drill. I think it's good to let them have some input, and I think it helps them take ownership over their program. I think there's one thing, because again, just human psychology, nobody likes being told what to do. You want them to feel like it's part of their idea. So if you can help them feel like, yeah, I really need to work on my my bunch to the third base line, or I really want to work on my arm slot down here on a do or die type play. I think when they have some input into it, I think that's definitely beneficial. And I think that's one way that, again, as a coach, there's always areas of emphasis that we see that they may not see, and we have to kind of guide them in the right direction. But if we can kind of help them figure it out and help them figure out, how to build their program themselves, I think we're a little bit better off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think more so like in season, especially, we have our 4 teams that are going, every which way, and I'm not able to, obviously I go to as many games as I can, but like I'm not able to see, every catcher every day. So I think that's something where it's like, like, hey, what do you want to work on? Like you just had this, it's like, coach, I really struggled with, the glove side down pitch, and like I need to hammer that out and I need to figure that out. Or hey coach, like I can't throw at all. I'm like six hopping it to second base or whatever. It's like, okay, well, like it doesn't really do me any good to like have something written up where it's like they're gonna come to me and like I had something completely different planned. It's like, so let's do what we need to do to get you right for the next game.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. And like I said, I think that's big for the drill work. I think it's really important for their throwing program as well. I think, for a guy that wants to gain arm strength or, lower their pop time or whatever the metric is that we're going to measure, guys need to have that awareness of what they're doing throwing wise, how their arm feels, why it feels that way, what amount of volume or workload they can handle or can't handle. But for your guys throwing, like I said, I know you give them some flexibility and you don't tell them, hey, we're going to throw it 90 feet here for this many throws and 120 feet for this many throws. But when it comes to throwing, it feels like throwing is one of the things that over the past couple of years, guys don't talk about as much anymore. Particularly for the guys that are wanting to start throwing out of the one knee setups or throwing out of some of these different positions, what would maybe be some advice or some things you would look for with guys who are kind of starting to do that?
As far as just like trying to get better with throwing or with
Yeah, because I know,
specifically?
well, I'd say specifically the guys that are wanting to throw specifically from one knee and then maybe just throwing overall, because like I said, I know there's a lot of guys watching this that are, similar to you and similar to me. And these one knee stances are new to everybody and they want to start implementing them because they see the benefits, but they're hesitant because, man, well, how does a guy throw out of that? How does a guy block out of that?
Yeah.
What would maybe be a couple of tips you give, for somebody in that position that needs to start throwing?
Yeah, I think if you're looking to start with the the one knee stuff, definitely start with the right knee down. I think the left throwing out of the left knee stance is just, it's a really hard stance to come out of and make a good throw. So I think definitely start, you know, not to say that it can't be done, because I'm sure there's some guys that can do it for sure. But I think I'd start with the, you know, the right knee down. Make sure that you have that knee down foot in the ground, kind of like that sprinter start stance, if you're able to get your ankle that way. But I think the big thing is just try it. Like, just be open to it, and like, hey, well, okay, like this feels weird having my leg, you know, my up knee close to me, or it like feels weird to have it out. Like, okay, we'll just change it. Like, you know, kind of figure out what works for you. I think in a lot of ways, the throwing from the right knee down kind of cleans things up. It almost like acts like a constraint for especially like the amateur catchers, you know, because, you know, most of my post grad, my high school guys, they all, even in the middle schoolers, like they all want to go get the ball so bad. Like they want to jump out and they want to take that, you know, 2 foot jab step and do a shuffle or whatever they have to do to get the ball to second. Where I think the right knee down really enforces like what I'm trying to get them to feel, which is like, pick your foot up and put it down, and like, let's go, let it eat. And I think the right knee down stance really simplifies a lot of that. I think for most people, like, it's just like, just dive in, like, see what happens, and
Yeah.
like, if it's not for you, then it's not for you. But like, I think it's definitely, it's worth a shot at the
Do
very least.
Do you have any guys that will start left knee down with runners on base, or do they kind of shift around, and when runners on base they particularly catch with right knee down?
So one of my guys, one of my post grad guys, um, I think typically like the blocking and everything feels easier for most guys with the right knee down, with especially with you know, typically the right hander on the mound, like their blocks miss more to your arm side.
Mm-hmm.
So like having that left leg up to push off of makes that a little easier. But one of my guys, he liked receiving and blocking better from a left knee down. So anytime there was like a run threat with just a runner on first, he would go right knee down just because it's his better throwing stance. But like, as soon as, say, if there's a runner on second and like he feels like he can throw this guy out at third, or there's not really a run threat, he would go back to left knee down just because that felt better for him. And like, he still had the ability to, you know, he was a better blocker from there and felt comfortable with, hey, I can just push off this leg and throw to third if I have to. So it's certainly not like a thing where it's like it's got to be this way. I don't think. I think every guy can kind of make it their own. Like, so like another one of my post grads literally just was right knee down kickstand, and even like he kept his leg in and like used that as the timing thing even when there's nobody on, like just because that was what felt best to him, like receiving, blocking, and throwing. So it's like, you know, if that's your best stance, like just stay in it.
Yeah. And that's, like I said, that's kind of the point that I was hitting on earlier, where I think a lot of things are very individualized, and that's where it takes, you know, there's not a blueprint, there's not a playbook. It's not, hey, we're all going to go right knee down and we're going to do this, you know, pre-pitch movement because this is what works.
You know?
It is very individualized. And it's funny, I think back to my high school days, and you wouldn't know it looking at me now, but I used to run sprints. And when I was in the blocks, you know, according to my track coach, my feet were backwards. Like I was more comfortable. I forgot now, my left foot more forward in the blocks than my right foot, but because I was right leg dominant, I was supposed to be the other way, but it just didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was just backwards.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing. I think, you know, just because you're supposed to be right knee down and you're supposed to be left knee down, it doesn't mean that it works the same for everybody. Especially in this kind of, you know, this age of, I hate to call it age of enlightenment, but man, there's so many new things being tried right now. I mean, I think it was you, and then I saw a number of other guys post a video the other day of Salvador Perez. And, every week or every 2
Mhm.
weeks, you see big league guys that are trying, and I mean like established MLB all-stars, like guys with big
Yeah.
contracts. They're
5-time Gold Glove.
exactly. These guys are trying new things, and they're figuring it out. It's not like there's one guy out there that
Mhm.
I wish I could say I had all the answers, but I just don't. It's trying to figure out what works best for those guys. That was one post I really liked, and it's refreshing to see guys who have success remain open-minded and trying new things, and it feels like that's just kind of the atmosphere in the catching world right now. Guys are super open-minded.
Yeah.
Guys are trying, and guys are seeing results of it. So I was really looking forward to watching this season and seeing how the changes made this past off season affected the guys in the big leagues
Mhm.
this year. Hopefully they'll start playing at some point this summer, and we'll be able to
Yeah.
see what those guys are doing. But do you have any guys? I know you've named a few names earlier, but do you have any favorite guys in the big leagues that you just really admire? You really like their style, you like to watch?
Um, Hedges for sure. I mean, I watched way too much Hedges video. Like just the way that guy caught the baseball last year was insane. And I can't really get enough of watching that guy.
Yeah.
Um, Austin Barnes for sure is another guy that's always up there. Max Stassi, it's another one of my favorite ones. And it's not just the one knee guys for sure. It's I think um, there's really good receivers that are doing it from all stances. Obviously like Garver was kind of the guy this year for or this past year for the one knee stuff. I think there'll definitely be more of it, whenever baseball does return. So hopefully there'll be, more and more guys that these kids can look to that, hey, this guy's doing this, and it's like that's really cool. I want to try that.
Yeah, I'm with you. And another guy you mentioned earlier who, all those guys are great. I mean, all those guys are phenomenal. I like watching Barnhart too. I like watching kind of the way he's
Yeah,
changed and he's evolved. Obviously made, big improvements and he's in
yeah,
what he's
huge.
done. But man, that's interesting. I know we're getting close to an hour. We're going to have to wrap this thing up in a few minutes, but before we do get off, is there anything that we haven't spoken about that you were really hoping we'd get to? Maybe we haven't talked about something blocking wise or throwing wise or mentality wise or whatever. We have a couple more minutes if there's something that you'd like to bring up and start discussing.
Not necessarily. I think, just in this time where it's like you have all this downtime for these guys, it's like this is, I was talking to somebody about this recently where you have all this downtime. Like now's the time if you're, a high school or college or whatever catcher, like looking for guidance on this new stuff. Like everyone's pumping out content. Like I can't keep up with the podcasts that are coming out. Like just and like I'm a huge podcast guy. Like I'm trying to like rip 3 a day at this point because like
Yeah.
you just can't keep up with it. So like this is the time. Like if you're interested and like you're willing to like mess around with some different stuff, like even if it's you just off with the tennis ball off the wall or whatever, like get open. And like that's really how I learned, was just like kind of exhausting all resources, or trying to at least, like podcasts, Twitter, Instagram. Like there's all this, this what you're doing here. Like there's so much good stuff. The Zoom calls, like there's everything out there, and that's like people are giving it away for free. Like if you're interested and you want to work and you want to experiment and get better, like this is the time to do it and like try and figure it out. So whenever baseball does return, like obviously it won't be as polished, but like you've, at least got an idea of like, hey, this is what I want to do when baseball comes back.
Yeah. Well, you're right about that. Right now, there's definitely more information than any other time, and I guess you could say I'm guilty of that too. But something doing a call like this. This is something that I was talking to Tom Griffin earlier in the week, and this is something I've been wanting to do for a couple of years. But you get busy, and it's just always kind of been number 3 or 4 or 5 on the priority list. And now that
Yeah.
everybody is kind of cooped up in the house, it's like, all right, it's time to do it. And,
It's
you
time to
know,
go.
it's time to go. It's go time, you know, so it makes a lot of sense, but you're absolutely right. It's funny you say that because I like listening to podcasts too. I'm not doing 3 a day like you, but I listen to as many as I can. I get on as many of the Zoom calls as I can. But it's amazing. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty in tune with it, and I know I'm missing a lot. Like I know there's
Yeah.
a lot of calls that I haven't been on just because you know I had my own thing going on at this time that was going on, or I'm with the family, or whatever, you know, whatever's happening. But there's a lot of information out
Mhm.
there. And like I said, you're part of that. You're part of the ones putting out the good information. That's why I wanted to have you on here. So I do want to remind everybody one more time that they can find you at Collin Wilber on Twitter and Instagram, because I know you pump out videos pretty regularly. You're also writing articles and you know, writing threaded comments, which is ultimately it's kind of like a blog entry. You know, it's hosted on Twitter,
Yeah.
but you're writing a lot of content like that. Is that what I would imagine that's enjoyable for you? I mean, because as much as you do it, is that a way you kind of you know, just like to spend your time, or is it a way that you just try to sort through your thoughts, or why have you kind of started doing that?
I think, well, like I said, with like how much I watch video on Baseball Savant, it's like I might as well do something with this, you know. I think I've tried so many times to like come up with like a list of things I like want to post or like talk about, but like it's really just like super random. I get down like random rabbit holes on Baseball Savant, like the Salvador Perez thing or like the Tony Walters thread I did. It was just like totally random. I get down, like start watching video, and it's like, okay, well, I want to, you know, see what, you know, trends I can see in these guys and like what they do well and what they don't. And like, you know, it's like I might as well, I just saved 26 videos to my phone, so I might as well do
Yeah.
something with it. I think it's a good way for me to like kind of get, you know, like almost selfishly, like I'm trying to get my thoughts out there, and it helps me because like it's like, okay, yeah, like I see all these things and like it makes sense in my head, but now, okay, now I have to say it, now I have to relay it to people, you know, to whoever,
Mhm.
to Catching Twitter. And, you know, like it's the same as like, you know, if you're working with your guys and it's like, hey, I see this is wrong or this is going well, like I need to articulate that. It's so I think it's good practice just to, you know, put it in words.
Yeah, I agree, man. And I've said that for a long time. I don't care if it's, you know, writing articles or giving presentations or just putting your thoughts into, you know, shorter form content like a tweet. The more you do that, I feel like it
Mhm.
gives you a better understanding, maybe just a better belief system of what you believe in. And then it helps you directly working with players because I know for me, every time I have a conversation like this, I pick up a word or a phrase or a cue, you know, or something that I'm like, oh man, that really hits home. I can see where that would work for a guy. So, you
Mhm.
know, I encourage all coaches to, you know, try to put their thoughts, I say on paper, nobody's really doing it on paper anymore, but put your thoughts down somewhere. You know, if for no other reason than it helps you become a better communicator. And, you know, I think you're doing just that. So, Colin, man, definitely, I appreciate the time. Appreciate you coming on here. It's been fun. It was good seeing you in December. I'm a little jealous of you that you have nice weather in Florida and you guys have baseball cranking up before we do. But man, just wanted
Yeah.
to say I appreciate it again. Appreciate the time and look forward to talking to you again soon.